Today, we're going over the most typical advice Gregg ends up giving his dearest friends when they try to invest, and that is how to create a buying plan. Why your buying plan is the most important part of your investing puzzle, how to create a buying plan that's right for you, and how to look into the future of your buying plan. We're going to be doing all those things. Gregg, while you were away learning how to vacation, I learned how to go live on Facebook for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. I am your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, he's back from vacation, the man they call GC because of his genius concepts, because he generates cash flows, because he's a great co-host, and because his name is Gregg Cohen. What's up, Gregg?
What's up, everybody? Great to be with you back from vacation. So excited to be here with you today. Thank you all for making the time to be here.
Back in studio, my friend, and our community's back. Welcome. Good afternoon, John Hannon. Good morning, Carl Thompson. Hi, everyone from Nadeem Shah. Eddie Harris from Hotlanta is in the house. Bill Shields. Afternoon, amigos. Thank you, Bill Shields. I appreciate you speaking in my native tongue. Mark Larrett is back. He's welcoming you back. Marilyn Cotterman from Homosassa, Florida.
Home of the manatees.
She's back. Leo F. Good morning from sunny California. Oh, man, it is a beautiful place over there. I already said Bill Shields. We got the roll call complete. Welcome, everybody. It's good to have the full team back in the house. Gregg, did you feel nervous that people did such a good job filling in for you? You know, you came back to spring training and you actually had to try out.
Well, you made it very clear that my seat was not reserved for me coming back because we had two amazing talents that kept the seat warm and did an amazing job. So, you know, we just constantly challenge ourselves here around JWB, and I got to bring my A game just to get invited back here.
Always compete, baby. Always compete. You gotta win your spot on the team every day. We got more people checking in. We got Lewis Carlson from Somers, Connecticut. Brett Ruiz from Ohio. Brett, welcome on board. Welcome here for the first time. Jen Filzen from the beautiful Monterey, California. Denny Davis is here as well. Welcome, Denny's. Hello, Alex Romanzi. So those of you that have been here a bunch, you know that this is a community-driven show. We love interacting with you in the chat. There's a real quick Winston Alejo from Maryland. Hello, Winston. There's a real quick trick for Alex, Winston, Brett, the first timers. Gene, you've been there a bunch of times, but you forgot to change when you first chat. It just defaults for me and GC to see it, right? Because the blue box above the text says panelists. You got to change that to panelists and attendees. And now everybody else sees you talking in the chat box. And I highly recommend that you do that because there's a lot of collective wisdom in this chat, a bunch of really savvy investors so that you can get not just our opinion, but you get their opinion as well and their experience and whatnot, right? This is a wide open show, showing it off to everybody. Second, if you want a question answered today, as we are doing the buying plan, Roldan Crepo is back. Welcome back, Roldan, man. Haven't seen you live in a while, man. It's great to have you back. If you want your question asked to GC himself or me, you please pop open that Q&A. Linda and Doug from Fort Wayne, Indiana, welcome. Please pop open that Q&A. And the reason why is because, as you'll see, that chat flies. Tons of people adding in there. It's awesome. In the Q&A, it just stays right in front of my face. I can't miss it. And I won't go cross-eyed looking for it, though I do my best, even when you put it in the chat. But I'll gently remind you if you're doing that. Last but not least, we got a beautiful, beautiful new design to nyais.com. That's notyouravageinvestorshow.com. Both work. And when you go there, you can see all the past episodes. You can see the properties of the week. You can see the blog. You can get links to the podcast, all the best stuff. And that's where we would love for you to go, unless what you want is some personalized advice to hop on with a team. Then you go to chatwithjwb.com, book a calendar call with Courtney, and we will start to welcome you into the family and or give you personalized advice. Really good use of your time. And now, without further ado, Gregg, you ready for this, bud?
Brother, I got to tell you, you're smooth today. Oh, man, the way you were just saying hello to everybody, the way you were weaving in what people can do next if they want to get more information. Dude, it ain't easy being you. It ain't easy being you. You make it look smooth, bro. You make it look smooth. Way to go. I am ready, and I know you are too.
Appreciate it, man. Listen, with great power comes great responsibility. And, you know, I don't take it lightly to be here and be the ambassador of all awesome things JWB, man. So, Gregg, we were on a run this morning. And as we're like discussing this show, I'm just like, am I right? Am I right in thinking that you got a bunch of friends, right? Super cool guy, really popular. You got a bunch of friends.
Well, you're wrong there right off the bat. Let's just, it's pretty much, it started out me and you, and then we have some friends here, and that's pretty much the extent of it.
So when your friends come to you, right? Because I remember doing this, and they're like, rental properties. I see you crushing it. I know JWB is doing great. I want to get into rental properties. Let me get 5 houses right now, right? Like, what is the usual conversation that you have with them?
And this was a conversation that, similar to you and I had a similar conversation to this, right? A lot of my friends over the years now reach out to us as, we've been around the game for 15 years now. And so those friends that I was, nonstop talking about rental property investing 15 years ago, over time have seen the success that JWB has had and have really kind of reached out to me and said, hey, listen, this is something I'm serious about. And it's interesting. When I have that conversation, normally with somebody that I know, whether it's a family member, a best friend, a really good acquaintance, you would think most of those conversations lead towards me telling them that now is the right time for them to invest in rental properties. But more often than not, I will say that the conversation starts with a lot of challenging questions that I ask them. And many times actually ends with me saying, you know what, I don't think this is going to be right for you right now because of this, that, and the other thing. And I know what a really great fit looks like. And it always is a positive conversation, but many times it doesn't end with rental properties being the right choice for them right there. And I think that is the definition of a successful advice or guidance, right? It doesn't have to end with buying the property, but we have to know why it works or why it doesn't, and what pitfalls would you be avoiding? What aren't you mentally ready for that would ring true later on if we don't talk about it up front?
What a noble friend that you are, Greg, right? Like, listen, if a friend's talking to me right now, I'm like, yeah, do business with me right now, right? So,
but, I think most people just want to jump so far into rental property investing. Right now, you see it 10 times as much as you saw it 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Right? Everybody, you look at the Wall Street Journal, you look at the major publications, everybody is talking about how single family rental properties are that asset class. That's a perfect storm right now. Everything is lining up, low interest rates, high expected appreciation, especially in a market like Jacksonville where there's high net migration, right? Everything is lining up here. And so it's creating this frenzy that people are saying, hey, I want to jump in. I want to get into rental properties. I've been thinking about it for a while. I think now more than ever, it's really important to pause. And my number one advice that I give to those folks that are nearest and dearest to me is we need to start with the end in mind. We need to start with a plan. We need to start with what the end goal is that we're trying to accomplish and work backwards and make sure that, number one, this is a great fit in terms of dollars and cents, but in terms of working relationship. And then we need to know step by step, what does that plan look like to get to that end point? Because many people just fall in love with this asset class, but they have no idea how to get from point A to point B to point C. And the end goal here is not to buy as many rental properties as you can, right? The end goal here is to accomplish a specific, important why that you have in your life, some accomplishment that monthly passive income is going to accomplish for you. And if you don't have those conversations, if you don't know what you're working for, if you don't know how many properties it's going to take to get there, you're flying blind. You're probably jumping in with both feet and both arms and doing a cannonball. And that's just not the best way for somebody like myself to take care of your money and to manage your expectations. So that's really the number one advice. I say, let's start with the end in mind. Let's work backwards. Let's make sure that this plan is in place, that you understand what it's going to take to get there, that you're willing to do it. And that from a working relationship perspective, that this is built to be a great fit, because there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs. And if you're not mentally ready to handle a lot of it, I'd rather have that conversation up front.
That's great of you, man. Listen, we have a great question already flying in from Denny Davies, your old friend, Denny Davies.
Absolutely. Denny, longtime client.
He says, Greg, you own 300 properties. What is your why?
My why has always been to control my time. For me growing up, I had 2 loving parents, a wonderful family. My parents were divorced, and I remember wanting to have more time with my dad, more time with my mom, and we couldn't do it. My mom worked multiple jobs, raised my sister and I by myself. or by herself, was a single mom. My dad was very loving, but he was on the road a lot. And I just remember thinking that I wanted more time. I wanted more time, when I was going to baseball, right? I wanted my dad to be there more. And so it's always been a big driver of me to own my time. And so that's my why. That's really what got me so fired up about rental properties, because I realized early on 15 years ago that this was an asset that it wasn't about this extra $100 a month or $200 a month that I was gaining. I looked at every single investment property that I was building into my portfolio as an additional a chunk of time ownership. And I knew it could be done passively. And I just jumped in after that point, after I realized that. So that's my why.
As you say that, Greg, it makes so much sense why you are always driving to passive, right? Like the idea that you're always positioning this as what JWB does is take away the headache, right? It's making this thing as passive as possible. The way that you've structured your business, the way that you've created the redundancy in your business to be able to take time off and do things, right? Like I as you're like articulating all this, it's all like falling like a Tetris block piece, like knocking out levels for me of seeing the way that you operate and why it all makes sense, man. That's really, really cool. So what are the conversations that don't end up with, you probably shouldn't do this right now? Like what are the whys? Is it whys? Is it situations? Like can you give me one or two examples of one of these conversations that didn't end up with a rental income property?
Yeah, absolutely. One comes to mind. One of my absolute best friends, a friend that I lived with in college, has been with me in all steps of putting this business together in this journey, and is just an incredible friend and somebody who knows me to a T, and listened to me, early on talk about the benefit of rental property investing. And then I remember maybe 5 years ago, we were at a wedding together, and he's probably the most stubborn friend that I have, and probably the guy who gives me, the hardest time at all points. And I love him for it. And I remember the moment we were sitting having a drink, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, listen, I finally listened to you. And I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And tell me more about rental property investing." And it was one of the most special moments, really. Actually, it was pretty cool. And so we started talking about it, and he shared with me about how his goals are to build a passive income stream. Love that goal, of course, and can definitely relate. And we started to talk through the buying plan through this as well. And I said, "Okay, well, why are you coming to this asset class? You have money in the stock market. Why are you coming to this asset class?" And he said, "Well, I really want this to be consistent. I want it to be passive." And I said, "Okay, talk to me about what your plans are, the resources you have. How much are you planning to take out of the stock market, put into this? Or how much liquid assets are you planning on putting into this from the bonuses that you may be earning at work and whatnot?" And what it shook out to is that he wanted to buy one property for the first year. And I said, "That's wonderful." And I asked about the future. And I said, "How big do you want to go in this?" And he said, "I'm not sure." And I said, "Okay, is that because you're not sure about this business model yet? Or is it because resources might hold you back?" And he's like, "Well, it's probably a combination of both." And I said, "Okay, well, here's some advice to help you out with. The reason that you're coming to rental properties is for consistency. You are not going to find a consistent asset class if you only own one rental property. That doesn't mean you can't buy one rental property at a time. In fact, that's what we love to work with clients who buy one rental property at a time. But I always share with them, and I shared with him, that the plan has to be in place to acquire more, because otherwise JWB is not going to be able to perform on the number one reason you're coming here, right? If you only have one rental property over a long period of time, what you're going to find is that you're going to love JWB when it's rented. And in a year where the resident moves out, your returns are not going to look that great. And you're not going to like JWB at that moment. And it's not that consistent approach that you originally came to rental properties for. A consistent portfolio really starts with 3 properties. And so I said, if you're not sure that you're going to invest in more than one, and if you're not sure that you have the resources to get to 3 properties in the coming years, then this probably is not the right fit for you. And he really appreciated that advice. And I really appreciated that advice, that he listened to me, because he's one of my best friends. He's got my cell phone number, right? If and when, and by the way, he's very stubborn and opinionated, doesn't let me go with anything, right? We talked about that. He's the first one to give me some grief, right? If in the 3rd year he owns this property, one property, we have a turn, and he wasn't expecting, he has to come out of pocket $3,000. Guess who's getting that phone call? It's not his portfolio manager, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
It'd be coming to me. And I don't want to have that situation. I know that if he had multiple properties and he had that property turn that happens in the third year, he's going to be fine, because the other two properties are going to outweigh the one that might be going through issues. And that's a consistent portfolio. So I'm not going to allow him to buy more properties or to buy only one property if there's not a plan in place to acquire more, because I'm not doing right by him. And that's how we feel about all clients, right? We love working with clients who want to purchase one, but the rule of thumb is we want you to be able to buy your second one by the time your first resident moves out. And on average, residents stay 4.5 years with JWB. So buying one right off the bat, if you can do it within the next 4.5 years, we're going to certainly encourage that. If it's not something that's in your plans to do more than one, or the resources aren't there to be able to do it within 4.5 years, we're probably going to, lovingly guide you in a different direction, because, this can accomplish rule number one for you, which is consistency.
Makes perfect sense, man. And, again, if you would have talked them into one property or let them do it, then it would have been not passive for you. You would have been limiting your time when you're getting blown up by your buddy who you really want to help, right?
Exactly.
Margaret Smith has a question here in the Q&A. She said, so did this friend find a truly consistent investment? Let's say one single stock to watch and perform year over year?
He did better than that. He did a little thing called private lending, which is something that JWB offers for clients as well. And private lending basically is where a client becomes the bank. And so, and it allows JWB to borrow those funds from the bank, from the client. And that's how we do a lot of our projects. It's how we will start 600 homes this year. We don't go to the bank of JWB every single time we want to go and build a house. We borrow money from clients like my friend. And the reason that I guided him there is because private lending is consistent, right? You don't have to put in hundreds of thousands of dollars to get consistency in private lending. And it's a great stepping stone to potentially get to the point where rental properties are the right fit for you. So he didn't know, he wasn't fully bought into this model yet. And he wanted consistency. So if that's the approach, if that's where your headspace is, right, private lending is probably going to be a great option.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, man. And I remember our conversation, right? Like at first mine was, hey, I want to use, when I first found out that I could buy with my 401k, I'm like, well, why don't I just buy one right now with my 401k? Let's get in.
Right.
And, you talked me down from that one. And it wasn't until I basically laid it out for you and said, yeah, man, I've got enough to get one right now. I know that if I sell this Peloton stock, once the year passes of, the cap gains, I can get my second one. And then I'll be on like a really nice track to close on my third within the next year or two. And at that point, you're like, all right, here's chatwithjwb.com. You're allowed, right?
And it's not, listen, we want to talk to everybody. Not everybody has to have that defined of a plan as Pablo there, right? Going to chatwithjwb.com, chatwithjwb.com, talking to my team is always a good idea, right? We want to make sure that the intention is there, that the opportunity is there, and that you're prepared that in the short run, while you only have one asset, it's not going to be consistent, right? There is going to be a year where a resident moves out, and you're going to have a lot of great years where we overperform while the home is rented. And you're going to have one that balances it out. That's how it goes. So
yeah, there you go. So we got a couple more questions. Let's knock out a couple more questions, and then let's start building out the buying plan. What do you think, man?
Let's do it.
Sounds good. All right. Anudo, welcome back, Miguel Angel, man. Good to have you here from Spain. He says, buying several properties means you put all the eggs in the same basket that is not easy to monetize if you need cash. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I would first want to understand how big the basket is and what other baskets there may be. If you are buying multiple properties, that may be all of your eggs in one basket in one market. And we have a lot of clients who do that. That's what I do. Right. I own all of my properties in Jacksonville. Right. So clearly there's some thought and some strategy behind why that works. I would say more often, though, clients take a portion of their assets and they bring it to this asset class. And that's really common. So a lot of clients, it kind of starts, and really when we build this buying plan, like we're going to go through here today, this is something that we do with all of our clients that we bring on board as well. So all of you have the opportunity to have this exact same experience. One of the questions we're going to go through is, talk to me about what your goal is. And then what percentage of your goal do you expect in terms of monthly income do you expect to come from rental properties? And that way we can identify, okay, does it make sense for you to put all of your assets in rental properties in Jacksonville? We're going to talk through that. For me, it does. For you, it might not, right? Or is it 25% or is it 50% or 75%? So we're going to have that healthy discussion. We're going to guide you down that path and make sure that it's a good fit. Your question, I think, was also about how easy is it to basically pull out cash in that regard. And I mean, that is one of the reasons why people come to real estate. It's because you can acquire leverage. You can acquire smart debt. Interest rates are so low right now, and lending requirements they're challenging, but realistic, probably what they should be, right? We know what they shouldn't be in the past, which is what fueled the Great Recession. Now it's challenging, but it's realistic. If you should get a loan, you probably can get a loan, right? So I wouldn't think that a lack of access to cash would be a downside to investing in multiple properties at all. In fact, we're going to have a show specifically on how to get a cash out refinance and a way to maximize your return on investment. That's coming up, I think, in 2 weeks, right, Pablo?
Is that 2 weeks? Is that next week? I don't have the.
Oh, it's next week. You're right.
It's next week. It's Adam Walbars, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Adam literally just did that. So we're gonna go through his experience. He went to refinance 7 homes and he ended up refinancing 6. So it's going to be the whole thought process and everything that he did. And he's got some really, really good tips. And Adam's a smart guy, man. So he's got a good process to share. Margaret Smith this is more of a comment. And I guess give me your reflection on this, right? Because I only did the private lender thing one time. And then I just wish I would have kept the re-upping. But Margaret Smith writes in here, I am a private lender and I find I have to burn them and churn them all the time. Each one a separate deal, each having risk of non-payment for a myriad of potential reasons. So she doesn't feel like she has long-term consistency in her lending life. Is that, I don't know who she is private lending with, but can you tell me the experience from the JWB side? From my end, it was pretty consistent and I could just kind of re-up and resign. Is that a risk thing or what is it?
Yeah. And Margaret, forgive me because I'm not sure if you're a lender with JWB. So let us know in the chat if you are. I'm going to assume you're not for my thoughts here. It's very common to have that pain point that you have as a private lender. Private lending is something that's a niche investment, right? Not many people understand it. It's so amazing. I love it. I do it. I lend my money out and earn a great return on investment from it. And it's a way to diversify within rental properties, but most people don't know about it. And then when they find out about it, they love the idea of it and they want to make it more easy, fluid, less transactional. They don't want to have to make a new decision on what to lend on as much as possible. And the other thing that people will find, like for JWB, we lend out or we pay 10% to our private lenders. So what people don't think about is if you're a private lender and you're lending your money out and earning 10% on it, they don't value and factor in the downtime because there aren't many operations out there that are building 600 houses a year like we are. And so what happens is you find one private individual who wants to borrow from you. Well, actually, yeah. So you're the lender. They want to borrow from you. They're trustworthy enough that you feel they're going to pay you back. And the problem is that they don't have that next deal lined up. And so it becomes something where you get paid off early, which is good. You get the money back and you're like, okay, cool. Now I have to get this money active again at 10%. How do I get it active again? And it's hard to find both somebody that's trustworthy, that has a track record, who you have a personal relationship with, who also demands the money, meaning needs the money as much to do this type of volume. So that's a pretty common challenge. For JWB, like I mentioned, we are constantly raising capital. And we're doing that because we are building so many houses so that we can provide a runway of turnkey inventory for our clients to be able to purchase those assets as cash flowing properties. And so we constantly have that demand for new capital to come in. And we don't have those issues. Did Margaret say that she's a private lender for JWB?
Yeah, she put not at JWB. She's been a lender since 2006, lends on rehabs and rehab rentals in the Sarasota area. And then right now, as you wrapped up, she puts exactly, Greg, got to keep the money out, but there are often large gaps where the money just sits. And that I knew that the JWB experience was kind of different, which is why I thought maybe she was somewhere else.
Very rare to be able to keep the money active. And so, yeah, that's one thing that we do. And it's hard to replicate.
Okay. All right. Well, great questions. Let's get into it, man. I'm going to share this buying plan right now. Let me pop this on the screen. Sergio, I'm going to get to your question in a second. Let me just kind of
While you're doing that, I'll kind of preface kind of what we're the steps along the path before you kind of get to this step here. So this client buying plan is a part of our onboarding process. So every new client coming on board gets to have this experience. And it's a couple of phone calls in. And if I just compare this to the normal way that people jump in and do a cannonball when they want to buy rental properties, most other operations out there are built to accommodate that. They put all their inventory out there and create this frenzy for people to go out and make offers on their inventory to buy all of their properties. And it's just like jump, not thinking with the end in mind. And what is sacrificed there is sometimes you make decisions today that aren't in line with that long-term plan. And it's really hard to set client expectations well, right? What's going to go really well here? And then what's the hurdle that you're going to find here? What's the challenge? What's the risk? When will this not work out well for you? Let's talk about all of these things up front. I mean, it's hard to do that when you're buying rental properties right now with any other, turnkey operation out there. So part of the reason that we go so slow and have multiple calls is because we want to set those expectations. We want to understand my number one advice, right? Start with the end in mind, right? So as we kind of get to the client buying plan, you're going to see that this is a part of, a few phone calls in for us after we've made sure that you really love this model, you love our team, that the returns work for you. And then we're going to do a client demo, which is something that we've spent a little bit of time doing on the show as well. And I know you had the opportunity to meet Mike Stewart on our team, who talked a little bit about the client demo and past shows on the show here. And then this will be a separate call that we're going to dedicate 30 minutes to an hour, really focusing on the buying plan. And we'll ask you to fill this out a little bit ahead of time, or at least put some thoughts together ahead of time. We want you to come into this prepared, understanding a few things. And the number one reason is why you're investing. We call it your why. And that's probably a good kind of segue for kicking this off, Pablo.
Okay, we're kicking it off with a blurry screen. So I'm going to stop share and reshare it real quick because we are hearing you loud and clear. In the meantime, Sergio has a question. How many mortgages can you have as a real estate investor? I believe it was 10. Can you go over again how one can continue to invest after 10 rental properties without running into funding roadblocks as a single individual now?
Yes. Well, technically, there's no limit to the number of mortgages you can have. You can have any number of mortgages. I have many more than 10 on my credit, right? The limitation at 10 finance properties is a Fannie Mae guideline, which basically for you means that the best rates, the most advantageous terms have a limit. If you have over 10 finance properties on your credit, no matter how good your credit score is and how great of a payer you are and how much money you have in the bank, you're not going to be eligible for that next loan to be backed by Fannie or Freddie, which means that your rates are going to be higher. There are a lot of ways to be able to overcome this. You can get over 10 properties and start to plan this out. Again, maximizing the number of spots on an individual basis, meaning I know Sergio asked if he's single and not married, but for those who are married or have a spouse or significant other, it's 10 per individual. So that's another reason why this buying plan is so important, because if your plan dictates that you need to get to 20 properties, we're going to talk about this in property one, that you need to close on one of those properties in your name, right? And get the mortgage in your name. And then your spouse might get the next mortgage, right? So that you can get actually 20 spots in that case. Of course, we're going to talk to your CPA and an attorney and all this good stuff. We're going to guide you along with your other financial professionals, but part of the conversation there. Sergio, for you as a single individual, there's going to be a 10 limit rule with Fannie and Freddie. That's going to limit the most advantageous terms. But a lot of times what we can do is build this plan with you. I know you're closing, I believe, on your fourth one, if I have it right. Sergio is a good friend of mine from college as well. And he knows my other friend, by the way, that I was speaking of, who's the most stubborn kid. He probably could name him. But for you, it's going to be limited to 10. What we'll probably do is look at the best return on your investment along with your goals. We can put you in a loan product that has not the best terms after 10. Right? You still can get loans after 10. Your interest rates are going to be a little bit higher. So we can take a look at that opportunity. Or we can look at the overall goal for you and say, does it make more sense for us to do an aggressive pay down on one of your properties? So by the time you're ready for property 10, you might be able to pay off that property, right? Or maybe we could refinance if you had, let's call it 8 properties at that time, and you could refinance enough from 7 of the properties to pay off one of them and then, free up another spot. And then you wanted to buy another 3, right? So there's a whole lot that we can do if we know early on, again, the value of this buying plan. If we know early on, we can plan strategically. So a few options there, but I'll be able to guide you early and often.
There you go. The good news, Sergio, is that with 10 properties, you become a very eligible bachelor. Just saying. All right. So I asked here in the chat, anybody have a why to share? Put it on the chat and we'll pick one, right? So right now I'm just going to fill in client name. Let's just put in client here, not your average investor, since that applies to all of us.
Surprised you didn't put in our friend Anonymous attendee.
I said, how do you spell that? Does that have an apostrophe over the A? So let's see what we got here. All right. So Winston Alejo's got this. This is probably a pretty regular one, right? My why is to try to replace my current income by the time that I retire. That gives us a nice target to hire. Winston, you want to give us what that number is, if that's okay with you, or do you prefer we guess? If you want, just put it in the chat and we'll start using real life numbers here. Give us
I'll just throw one out there just so he doesn't have to give anything personal. We appreciate all of the input here. So let's just do 5,000. Yep. All
right. So you put in 5,000 lifetime monthly goal that auto populates it here to 7 properties. Can you explain why that's 7 properties, Greg? Does that mean that you're going to get $800 per, cash flow per property? Is that what's going on?
Not exactly. Right. But let's start about what let's start with the end in mind for this buying plan. What are we trying to accomplish? Right. You're seeing a theme here, right? One of the reasons most people don't go through this exercise is because the idea of building out a buying plan for rental properties is complicated, because many times it will take 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to accomplish whatever that number may be. And there are a whole lot of variables that come into it. If you're buying with financing, it can have a dramatic impact on what your plan is and what your cash flows will be, depending on what your interest rate is today, or how that may fluctuate in future years. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard me talk now for over a year about how interest rates are going to be going up, prices are going to be going up, and that's going to drop future cash flow. So if you're trying to put a 10-year plan together, who knows what interest rates are going to be in 10 years? And if that's highly a part of a financed property plan, it almost gets to a point where it doesn't even make sense for us to do the planning, because it may all just be a giant crapshoot. Right. So the key here is when you're building a plan, you have to focus on something that is tangible, that removes a lot of the variables. And the way that we do this is by first starting by understanding what is the absolute minimum number of properties that you need to acquire in order to accomplish your goal. By doing that, we basically take the financing variables out of the equation and we say, all right, in order to accomplish a $5,000 a month lifetime goal from rental income, there's no way that we're going to be able to do this by owning less than 7 properties. And the reason is because if you look at the average property in JWB's portfolio, and it's let's say you take the mortgage out of there, you take away the payment of principal and interest payments, you keep all the other expenses, right? Taxes, insurance, and things like that, management fees. At the end of the day, you're going to net out about $800 a month. So each asset, when it's fully paid off, will be an asset that will deliver about $800 a month at a minimum. So by doing this, we're focusing on things that we can actually use to make decisions. We're taking away the financing component of it, and it's giving us our first milestone. You see how it says current milestone there? That doesn't mean that's the end all be all, right? We may decide once we get to 7 properties that we may choose to acquire more, but at least we know that the first milestone is really getting to 7. And that makes this tangible, actionable, and really worthwhile when you remove a lot of those extra variables.
All right, there you go. So you are starting with the end in mind. The end is what the cash flow is once it is paid off, period, right? Mm-hmm. So then you put this 7 piece in here, right? That is, again, because there's an average of about $850 a month in rent post regular fees, right? Like property management fees that come out monthly fees and stuff like that you account for. And then what's the next step after that, Greg?
So prior to this call, we're going to ask you to do a little bit of thought ahead of time. And we're going to ask you to identify how much initial capital you want to put into getting to that passive income goal. Many people coming here will have already in their mind said, I'm looking to invest $50,000 or I'm looking to pull $150,000 out of the stock market and put it into properties. So we're going to ask you to do that thought process before we get into the buying plan. And so that would be that initial capital to invest. Why don't we put $150,000 there for the initial capital invest?
Okay.
And then we're going to ask you to think a little bit more and think into the future, because in order to accomplish this plan, we're going to have to make annual additional capital investments, right? How much money can you either save, generate? Do you get in future bonuses from work? What's that annual amount that you can contribute to this asset class going forward? And so let's say for this asset, let's say $50,000 a year for this plan. 50.
That's 50. That's $50 a year. 50 McChickens.
We're going to need a little bit more than that.
A little more than that. I got you. If I was coming to you and I told you I could put $50 a year, you'd tell me private lending, maybe.
That's right.
All right. Cool, man. So, all right. So now that we're here, are we going to sheet number 2?
Yeah.
And again, just to contextualize, this is initial capital invest. This is what you got. This is what you got. I'm not going to call it laying around. This is what you've worked your butt off in order to like have this thing ready to go. It can be selling some stocks. It can be you've had this in some kind of a fund and you're ready to move on it, right? Like it could be inside your IRA. It could be inside a stock portfolio, or it could be sitting in a pile of cash in some other investment or whatever. Or maybe you just had a liquidation event, right? And you got that going on. You just sold another property. And then the additional annual capital to invest, that is, all right, well, if I'm a busy squirrel and I'm storing away my nuts as I'm eating also, then I can also put aside an extra $50K per year based on my active income plus whatever active investment stuff I have going on. Correct?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. So now we go into the other sheet. I'm hesitant to like show this whole sheet because I think it gets blurry when it goes too big, but I'm going to expand it so people see the scope of the sheet, and let me know if it's too blurry in the chat and we'll zoom in and zoom out just so people get a scope of it.
Yep. I think we'll be able to zoom in just a second here. The bottom section, I'll just go over really quickly. It's just an assumptions section. So you're able to see what's driving as we go through all this. I don't think we need to go through all of the assumptions right now, but just know that there's real data here, real numbers that are driving what we're about to kick out here on the buying plan. And then you can
and it looks like the assumptions are all prices of right now, right? Like purchase price right now, rental income right now, the conventional financing rate right now, all the year one stuff, right? Because that's what you're looking at. That's tangible, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool, man. So I'm gonna zoom back in just for the sake of our eyes here, and let's see what else. Hold on, let me do open it up here. Okay, so it is pre-populated. My Y is here. My name is here. Not your average investor. My lifetime monthly goal is here. My properties that I want to hit. Initial capital, savings plans. So now I see this scenario 1, and it's got the different types of ways that I can purchase. Talk me through this.
Yes. So one of the things we're going to work with you is to understand your capital sources, and then the types of purchases you're going to make are going to be very dependent on the type of capital that you have. Like, for example, if you're buying with conventional financing, be able to do a lot of things there, meaning you'll be able to put less down to acquire more properties because you're using other people's money. If you're purchasing in a retirement account, a different part of the plan needs to take that into account. There's going to be a different capital requirement there if it's in your retirement account. And when you see NRC there in row 13, that's non-recourse financing. That is synonymous with buying properties in your retirement account. So we're going to go through that. And then of course there's cash purchases. And I'm a big fan of smart debt, but I think there is definitely a time and place for people to be buying with cash too. It's dependent on their goals. It's not always just about the best return on investment. So if that's lined up with your goals, we, of course, will have that discussion. We'll know this as we're going through this with you, but we're going to break down the types of purchases that are going to get you to where you need to be as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. So we got that broken down. Do we go down into here, Greg, or now are we inputting actual properties that we're buying and messing around with it?
I think you're going to be amazed at how both simple this is, and then how really, hopefully what I hope everybody sees is how impactful this is as we go through this process. So the simple part is really easy, right? Let's start with scenario 1. Scenario 1 is what you share with us as being your goals. We're going to help take those those goals that you maybe have not actually drilled down into what does that mean for a number of purchases each year in Jacksonville. We're going to make that very tangible and concrete. So for not your average investor here, we saw that their plan, the way to accomplish basically replacing their active income with passive income, is $5,000 a month in monthly passive income. The way that they're going to accomplish that is by getting to 7 assets at a minimum with JWB in Jacksonville here. So, and they have $150,000 to get to their goal in year 1. Now, if there's not a real reason to go with non-recourse or with cash, then what we will probably land on is using conventional financing. Pablo, why do you think that is?
Oh, my guess would be because you get the most ROI when you leverage your money. And based on the idea that right now, interest rates are at a historic low, this is the cheapest money you're ever going to get. That actually turbocharges your returns that you can lock in for 30 years. And that window will probably go away at some point in the lifetime of this.
Well said, brother. Well said. And my job and my team's job is to be the best steward of your funds on a risk-adjusted basis. How can we take your money and maximize your returns, both in cash flow and equity gain and really all of the profit centers? So we're going to probably land on conventional financing unless there's another reason that we would go in another way. So if we've got $150,000 of capital that you're ready and willing to bring to this asset class, we can assume that it takes about $50,000 for a down payment and closing costs on every purchase. So we'll keep it simple there, right? Pablo, you can just put a 3 in year 1 there.
Okay. By the way, Greg, that's pretty conservative, right? Like, I know that I'm just coming up on my second property. I'm probably putting down just south of 30 grand, right? Like I'm getting, I guess, cheaper properties. I'm putting down 20%. Mm-hmm. So all in with my $130,000 property where I'm putting in 20%, that is 20 low, mid 20s. And then plus closing costs, I'm like just right at like 30, 31,000, something like that. Right. So there is other options to do that with, right?
You're 100% right. And I think everybody's going to really love the next step here, which is where we get to run a couple of different scenarios, right? We'll start with the first one based on everything that you share with us, just to give you kind of a concrete example of what we know can be done in the current market. And then we're going to try and supercharge it even a little bit more.
Let's do it, bro. Let's supercharge.
All right. So in the first scenario there, we had $150,000 of capital. Conservatively, that would get us to 3 properties in the first year. Mm-hmm. And we asked you to do a little bit of thinking about how much are you planning on stocking away, or how much do you plan to accumulate in other resources, right? The number was $50,000 a year you're going to be able to save or gain from other resources, or take away from the stock market. You're going to take 50 grand a year and put it into this asset class, whatever it may be for you. And so we can just break that down into 1 property per year. So if you want to put one property in year 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, I think 5, whatever the number will get us to a total of 7 properties.
So right now we're at 5. Let's say year 6, you want to, you have a down year, whatever. So there you go. We're at 7 properties there.
Well, let's just keep it simple. You're already into scenario generation there, Pablo. I can't keep you contained. You're like Jordan.
I'm an ideator, man. This is what I do. All right.
He doesn't like boxes. He doesn't like boxes. Don't box this guy in. So we've got 7 properties. This lines up with your plan. How cool is it to know that based on market conditions here in Jacksonville and using assumptions of what prices will go up in the future and what interest rates will go up in the future, that this is a 5-year plan to get to the minimum number of assets? Do you feel like that helps give you a concrete idea of what's going on here, Pablo?
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's the start of the process, right? Nothing that's earth shattering, right? I didn't put any math formula here that's going to blow anybody's mind, but it's important to know. I mean, you would be surprised at how many people come to JWB and they say, hey, I want to build up an income stream of $10,000 a year, and I want to do it in 3 years. And I have $40,000 to put into it, and probably 25 the next few years, right? That it's really important for us to guide that person and say, let me show you what this really looks like here in order to accomplish that. And many times people are surprised. It takes a lot longer, right? And we want to have those conversations up front. So Pablo, if you wouldn't mind, go all the way to the right there, because we're going to see a couple of things.
This way to the right or the other way to the right?
Well, that's actually even better. So lines 22 and 23, what we're doing there is we're tracking your total annual positive cash flow and your total annual equity gain from home price appreciation, right? We're seeing all 5 profit centers actually here. Your positive cash flow, we're including your tax savings and your principal pay down. Just trying to keep it simple here. But you see from your first year there, you're able to build up positive cash flow of about $6,300. In year 2, guess what? You keep that $6,300 and you added an additional property, which brings you up to $8,100 a year. And it's cumulative going forward down the line. And when it gets to annual equity gain, the number starts to get really large. Remember here, we talk about numbers about how, like, Jacksonville's home price appreciation rate year over year on average is 4.3%. And we talk about how that's 19% more than the national average. We talk about other comparable cash flow markets are in the 3s and the 2s. And the reaction that I get from people when I tell them that is they're like, yeah, it's the difference between 2 and 4, Greg. Cool. And I'm like, I don't think you get it, because we're not talking about like $10 assets here. We're talking about you holding on to an asset that might be a $200,000 asset that's appreciating at 4% a year versus 2% a year is huge. And you holding on to this asset for 10 years or 20 years. I mean, these numbers get really significant. So again, if you go to that $23,000, $24,000 number that you're showing there, that's just the equity gain of owning 3 assets that went up 4.3% per year, right? Like it's $24,000. Again, what this should reiterate to everybody is, like, if you're only looking at cash flow, you're missing the boat. When you hold on to assets for a full market cycle, the biggest determination of your return on investment is not going to be positive cash flow. It will be home price appreciation. You just got to give it long enough. You got to be invested for a full market cycle. So hopefully that sheds a little bit of light on that.
Yeah. And again, you're talking about a full market cycle. The historical rate is 4.3%. If we are really looking at this right now, year 1, based on what the market is doing year 1, you're really looking at much closer to that 10% or plus appreciation of what's happening in Jacksonville right now. You guys have just kind of normalized this throughout, like what to expect historical appreciation rate, right?
And I think that's the right approach, meaning looking at that 4% number, putting it here, because again, I can't play both sides of the fence. The fact that we've had more than 4% appreciation in Jacksonville last year is real. But again, I'm telling you that when you hold on for 10 to 20 years, it's not going to be over time. Most likely it's going to be right around 4%. This is a really big up. You're going to have years where it's lower than 4%. Probably not going to have a big dip like we had in the Great Recession, but it's going to be about 4% when you get through to the end of the full market cycle. And so I wouldn't even factor that in, that it's been, 11% appreciation year over year.
Okay. All right. So
sorry,
is it time to ideate now? Like, can we,
yeah,
I think
go to the other right, because what I want you to do is to take a mental picture of something here. And actually we'll probably be able to show it on the screen here, but look at the totals here over 10 years by taking this $350,000, right? That's the total capital that you invested, right? You controlled, call it $1.4 million of assets. The reason I'm getting to that number is roughly $200,000 times 7. You put $350,000 of your capital into it. You controlled and owned $1.4 million of assets that are kicking off after a 10-year period. They've kicked off over $100,000, $105,000 here in positive monthly cash flow. And over 10 years, you've earned over $500,000, actually $566,000 in equity gain from investing in a growth market. Really cool.
That's huge. That's really, really significant.
I mean,
like I can't imagine. I guess so what's the total investment? It's $50,000 per property. So what you said is $350,000 in 10 years to return, 200%. That's pretty significant thing that I wouldn't expect in the stock market. I wouldn't expect, like maybe a really, really good investment in a company that pays you a 2x, 3x multiple or something like that in 10 years. You could get something like that, but like getting 200% in 10 years is really significant.
Absolutely. And you probably can't do it with getting positive cash flow every single month, like we're talking about, right? And you probably can't do it in an asset class that historically goes up in value every single real estate market cycle. It has gone up in value. Sure, there's been years where we went down. We all know what that feels like. But even over the 20 years when you had the Great Recession, that 20-year segment, it still went up 4.3%, right? So you don't, and that's when I talk about risk adjusted return on investment. You can't get this kind of return, call it a 200% return over 10 years in a risk adjusted fashion, where you've got all of these things that mitigate your risk. One of the reasons why I love this asset class.
Man, makes a lot of sense. I love this. So this has been super powerful visualization. All right. Quick question. Raja Bantu asks, where can we get this JWB client buying plan Excel? I know that we talked about this before the show, but this is something that you go to chatwithjwb.com and they walk you through it, because it's a very simple sheet. It's just one of these things where what you want is somebody talking you through it, right? Is that kind of how it is?
Absolutely. This is available for everybody that would like to have this conversation. Go to chatwithjwb.com. You can set up a time to speak with my team. I mean, truthfully, there is a lot more that goes into this conversation than the simple approach that we're taking right here. There's a lot that we have to find out about you for this to really be as monumentally helpful as I think it can be. So it's available for everybody. Jump on the phone with my team and we'll be able to do that. And there's more. I know we're getting close to a minute 30, but there's more to this actual buying plan that I think is even going to be more helpful for you guys.
Awesome. Before we go there, we got a question. I want to answer Bud Bernier's questions. He's asked a couple here. 1031 exchanges. Do you have expertise for transitioning a portfolio of properties to a JWB portfolio?
Yes, absolutely. 1031 exchanges are something we're very familiar with. And one of the challenges you find with 1031 exchanges is adhering to the timeline, especially in an environment like today where it's hard to identify properties outside of JWB. We have inventory. It's not an issue for us, but outside of JWB, you only get 45 days to identify properties after you close. You only get 180 days to close on them. And people can't even find a property in 180 days now. That's not an issue with us. So we're absolutely ready to help with 1031 exchanges. We also have a 1031 exchange custodian that can help you, dot the I's, cross the T's, all that good stuff. So again, chatwithjwb.com is where you want to go and start that process.
Excellent. And another one I think you can answer real quick. Bud Bernier asks again, does your team have expertise in procuring, building multifamily properties, duplexes, triplex, et cetera?
We love multifamily properties. It's just not something that you're going to see a lot of in Jacksonville. It's just not the way the housing stock is built. And even as far as building new construction, we don't build a lot of multifamily properties. Usually it just doesn't make sense. Single family is the best risk adjusted return that we have found specifically in our market, the way that the housing stock is built and the way that the housing codes are and what you can build on certain properties and all that good stuff. So no, we do not have multifamily properties for you. However, if you're really searching for multifamily, what I would encourage you to look into is townhomes. Townhomes have almost all of the advantages of multifamily properties. It's just you own each individual unit. You might have 6 townhomes under one roof, and you would own each individual unit, which actually has some advantages over multifamilies. And we do have townhomes. So we certainly have a solution for you there, but single family, a townhome technically is a single family house. So that is what you're going to find with JWB in Jacksonville.
All right. And I get the feel, Greg, are we about to start doing some future generation here? Some looking into the future and an idea?
Oh, dude, this is your zone. Lead us.
All right. Real quick. Before that, the veracity of the data. We got a question on the data here. Joe John puts in the chat. Shouldn't the equity gain line 23 for each of the first 5 years at least be equal to the amount you are putting in minus closing costs? So the first year equity should be close to 150K less closing costs. Gained is the price of what you're actually purchasing or the amount that you're putting in. Is that equity gained?
So Joe I believe what he's saying is, shouldn't we reflect all of the equity in the property, right? What we're just showing here is the equity gained from appreciation. I could make the numbers look a whole lot better. I think that's what Joe is suggesting here, that if we put the full equity there, it would be even higher. Like, for example, you've got 3 assets there that you basically, your equity would be market value minus what you're into the property for, minus all of your liabilities and whatnot. And even if we were going down the cash route, right, your equity would be huge because you'd have $200,000 in equity, even if you didn't get any home price appreciation. So I think that's what he's referencing. Joe, we built this really just to show just the equity gain from the home price appreciation on it. And that's a little bit easier for you to see the return on investment. Just like Pablo, it was easy for him to calculate a couple hundred, 200% return over 10 years. That's really the point of this one.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you said it, reminds me of like gambling sites when you put a bet in and you're like, you put 10, they're like, you're putting 10 to win 22. No, you're really putting in 10 to win 11, but they turbocharge it, right? Like this is really just the what you're actually putting in to win. All right, cool, man. That makes a lot of sense. Greg, should we do this based on questions, or should we do this based on let's do like, like start messing around with it and then go through?
I'll guide us a little bit here. So,
okay.
So we originally rolled this out, and some of the feedback that we got from clients that were going through this is great for me to understand, but what happens if we have a sudden windfall of cash? What happens if I get promoted and I start to earn an additional $50,000 a year? And I don't know that right now, but in 3 years, it's that way. What happens if I want to do a cash out refinance because my real estate appreciated 11% a year and I didn't know that it was going to do that? And I can pull out some money to be able to speed up my portfolio in the future. And these are real life things that of course happen here in Jacksonville and with clients. And, there might be an inheritance, there might be a different job that pays a whole lot more. So we get to go into kind of dream mode with you and create this scenario generation. And the key here as we're going through this is I want you to think about small tweaks to your plan. And we're going to see what the impact is in terms of positive cash flow and home price appreciation. So Pablo, if you go to the second one down there, the second plus there you go. We just unlocked dream mode, baby. There's scenario 2. So now we've got Mr. or Mrs. Not Your Average Investor. Again, the goal is to be able to get them to $5,000 a month in passive income. We know that we need to have at least a minimum of 7 assets in the portfolio to do it. And let's start to dream a little bit, right? Pablo, what fun thing that's going to give you a windfall of cash, Mr. Not Your Average Investor, do you want to assume happened to you sometime in the first year, 2 or 3?
I mean, it's easy for me. I'm building a business. So, my scenario, so everybody knows, is I've been building this business. JWB is my client, my favorite client for the record. And as I haven't been paying myself, right? I've been building out a business. I've been building out this cash flow stream, but now I'm at the point where I land a couple of big clients. Man, I could be taking home an extra $100,000 this year that right now my wife and I haven't been accounting for, right? So very, not easily, but like this could very much be my case where, let's call it, I make an extra $75,000 this year that's very feasible for me. And that now we can put into play based on what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So we just identified that we're going to play around with an extra $75,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see how this speeds this up. And really what the net effect of the positive cash flow and home price, the equity gain from the home price appreciation. So Pablo, let's say that your $75,000 a year starts in year 2. All right. So for year 1, you still have 3 properties. Go ahead and put 3 there.
Okay.
Yep. We got that. Now in year 2, we have an extra 75,000. Let's assume that we're able to work with you ahead of time because you're now a client. We could plan this out to find some lower priced inventory for you, right? A renovation property that you might be able to get in for 2 properties, putting in $75,000, right? We're going to get aggressive here because this is dreamland, right? It's not easy to find those, but let's do it. So now for year 2, you're able to get to 3 properties in year 2, right? And then the goal, of course, is to get you to 7. That's your current milestone. So we'll put 1 there. All right. Now what we've done is we've taken that 5-year plan and we dropped it down to 3. Very cool. I'm sure all of you expected that the number was going to go down from 5 to 3. Again, not earth shattering, but let's start to look at the cumulative positive cash flow. And Pablo, if you can show the first scenario and the second scenario in the same frame, I think that would be the best way for us to look at what we just created here.
Right. So these are the scenarios, these ones here.
Yeah. And go all the way to whichever right or left it is to the end, closer to Z.
Yep.
There we go. All right. So the big thing here is we made some minor tweaks to the plan, right? Now, earning an extra $75,000 a year is not minor, right? But we said we're in dream mode and that it's realistic and possible,
Yep.
right? What we did is we made some minor tweaks to the plan. Instead of it being a 5-year plan, it now became a 3-year plan. Something to take into account, that same pile of money that Pablo just came to us with, or Mr. Not Your Average Investor came to us with is the same, right? What fires me up and what fires my team up is you can come to us with a certain pile of money and we can engineer this to have the best risk-adjusted return on investment. So that same pile of money is there. It was $350,000 invested in the first year, or in the first scenario, it's $350,000 in the second scenario. But when you start to look at the numbers of your cash flow and your home price appreciation, monumental swings, right?
Yeah.
Just by a small tweak, we were able to generate over roughly $20,000 just in positive cash flow and over roughly $60,000 in equity gain, right? And what it shows is the value of investing early. Of course, what it also shows is that interest rates go up. This scenario generator is built to show you that the property you purchase in year 5 produces less positive cash flow than the property you purchase in year 3 or year 1. So all of those things combined help people see the best opportunity for them to earn the best risk-adjusted return, and tangibly what that is going to return for you right there in terms of cash flow and appreciation.
That's beautiful, man. So is this kind of an exercise in like present value of money? Is that kind of like what we're looking at right now, plus a couple of other factors? Is that what that means?
No, not taking into account the net present value. I'm not discounting it back. I'm not doing an IRR calculation. This is really just dollars. This is the dollars that would earn, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, if you can speed it up a little bit. So for me, right, I'm 40. This means that by the time I'm 50, I make an extra 120 grand. Like that's insane. That's amazing. Right. Or, I mean, I guess it's more than that. It's really an extra 140,000. And then that turbocharges my next 10 years. So really just speeds up the path to retirement much quicker. Is there other variables we can mess with outside of the property number here, Greg?
Well, all those assumptions are able to be changed, and we could do that. We typically don't, though, because, the reality is that everything is going to change in real estate, right? The reality is, let's make a plan, give us a concrete goal to work towards that we share with our team right off the bat. And then we are constantly watching this with you, right? This is something that we reference every month, right? When we look at your client ROI report, the information that you share with us here then goes on to your client ROI report, which is that monthly report that you see every single month that's updated for you. So it's front and center. It's on your call with your portfolio manager every single month. And then each year, we're going to sit down and we're going to revisit this plan and see if anything has changed. And we're going to bring up-to-date market variables. So this is built with some assumptions for what the market will do going forward, like interest rates going up and home prices going up, but it will be updated. And that's the best way to make sure that your plan is tangible, actionable, and realistic going forward.
Amazing, man. So Margaret Smith has a really good question here. So she puts in, so as someone who could retire now and might, would it be better to just lend at 10% for cash flow, no appreciation over 10 years? Or how would that compare with your spreadsheet with 350K invested?
Great question. One that I get often, my team gets often, and it's a different answer for everybody. So the question is, what's the right thing for Margaret to do? Private lending or owning rental properties? The reality is that most likely your best returns on investment will come from owning rental properties. I'm assuming that you're holding on for a full market cycle, though, right? If you're only holding on for a year, 2 years, 3 years, it might not be the case, because in order to count on home price appreciation, you need to be investing for a full market cycle. The way to compare it is if you take private lending and you earn 10% from your private loan, that's earning a 10% return on investment, just to keep it simple, right? In rental property investing, you're going to earn 7 to 9% for all of the profit centers not named home price appreciation. So if you're not investing for a full market cycle, you're getting 7 to 9% by owning the asset over here, and you're getting 10 over here. That would lead you to say private lending is probably the best bet for you. Now, if you're investing for a full market cycle and you're using conventional financing, though, we can easily show how you can earn a 15 or 20% return from owning the rental property when you factor in home price appreciation and you factor in using conventional financing. So it's not a one size fits all. I mean, I would probably answer like I normally do, and my team would answer like we normally do, Margaret, with more questions for you. So what's most important to you right now? How long are you planning on holding these assets? Are you willing to give up potential return on investment to not have to worry about maintenance and vacancy costs? How do you feel about taking out loans? All of these are really good questions. And I would encourage you to reach out to my team and have those conversations. And we can literally put it here on the plan here for you, and weave private lending in there too.
Again, reaching out to the team is simple. Chat with jwv.com, and you get to, build this with one of the teammates. That'll really, really help you out. So real quick question. Sarah and Jennings asks, how long is a full market cycle?
A full market cycle is known to be between 10 to 20 years. And that's just based on looking back at how real estate's values have actually gained over the years. If you look back at 10, 15, 20-year segments, more often than not, what you're going to see is that those same segments line up with the historically accurate home price appreciation rate. In Jacksonville, it's 4.3%, and it's that way. And your market will be a different appreciation rate. But if you look at 10, 15, 20-year cycles of time, you're going to see that it largely correlates to that historically accurate home price appreciation rate.
Yeah. And Greg, and just to clarify, right? Like, I know you're really, really prudent with your language. I know that you definitely don't want to give anybody any misconceptions. So you say, if you're holding on for a full market cycle and, that means you're going to get 4.3% appreciation rate, then, then that's the comparison to make. The reality of the situation is there is a chance that in 8-9 years, it's still even higher than 4.3%. Like right now, the market is currently appreciating at 11%. So it would have to get down to 4.3% and then stay under 4.3% for another however long until it gets down there before it becomes that. So realistically speaking, and I know that you're never going to sell someone a property based on this assumption, but realistically speaking, when I'm considering the risk as an investor, I'm thinking Greg's giving me this really, really safe advice. But when I'm looking at my money versus putting it in Tesla or putting it into gold or Bitcoin or whatever I'm thinking, and I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, okay, or at least I'm just saying from right, this is not JWB's opinion, but when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, I'm putting it into this asset class right now that is growing at like an 11% clip. I think it's going to stay that way because I see all these other factors like people moving away from big cities, coming to the South, people coming to Jacksonville in general, right? Like even just from Miami to Jacksonville, I'm one of those cases, right? Like I didn't come from New York. I didn't come from California. I came from in-state just because quality of life here is really, really good. I think about Fortune 500 companies that are building out headquarters here are going to be bringing people. So the overall macroeconomics of Jacksonville looks really, really good. It's an awesome place to live. I expect home price appreciation to be above average, maybe not 11%, but above average for the next, I don't know, man, 3 to 5 years. And that means that for it then to get down to 4.3%, it'll have to be below average for the next 3 to 5 years in order to be that window at 10%. So, these are very much under promise, over deliver numbers that you are telling people to think about.
Yeah, I think there's an expectation that you're making public, that you're making your decision to invest with us. There's an expectation, and it is built on this type of cash flow, this type of return on investment, and an expectation to hold on for a long time. And, you're expecting to see about 4% appreciation after that long time. But that doesn't mean that you can't see upside based on what the situation is right now. And the situation is right now, like we have been saying for a year, it has never been a better time to invest in rental properties, specifically because of two factors. One, your interest rates on your debt right now are historically low, and loans are available to people who should be getting loans. And that is not changing right now. Like, this is the time to be investing based on the deal being the debt. And you've got that combination, along with it has never been more clear that you're going to see above average home price appreciation in the short run than right now. And I don't say that very lightly. I very much limp into that conversation because I don't want to be wrong and I don't want to sell people based on prices going up, but I just don't see it any other way, right? We came strong in the beginning of this year, And we predicted 8 to 10% home price appreciation in Jacksonville for this year. And it's because we have extremely low supply and demand is insanely high for this asset class. So it's two things. I'm going to want you to come in with the right expectations of what does JWB need to do to perform? What does this market need to do to perform? And that's where that 4.3% appreciation number is going to come in over a full market cycle. Good. We're all clear. That's the expectation. There is significant upside right now in terms of financing and in terms of expected home price appreciation. That's just real.
Wow, I never thought that I'd hear you say all that
You got
stuff
me.
so aggressively.
You
Yeah,
got
yeah.
me.
Listen, hey, it's true that listen, you don't do this lightly, right? Like you were saying this based on the fact that there is less than a month of inventory on the market. Jacksonville is still the second highest, fastest growing city in America right now. You know, there is no housing supply and there's a ton of people that want it, right? So like the idea that it's going to be anything less than above average appreciation in the short term is just a fact, right?
That is the opinion of JWB. You can't fix the housing supply shortage problem overnight. It takes building houses to do that. And that takes a long time. And it's going to need a lot of houses built to solve that shortage.
Okay, well, I'm going to make you comfortable and come off the subject right now. Denny Davis has a question. He says, so Gregg, circling back to your original story about your friend, why couldn't he get this? If he actually listened to these numbers, he should be diving in, right? Do you find stubbornness more often than not when your team talks with potential investors? It's kind of a loaded question, but I'll let you navigate.
Yeah. So, it's a conversation that I had with my friend recently. And I said, hey, buddy, the same thing, the spiel that Pablo and I just went on. I said, dude, this is the time if you're thinking about it. So let's talk. And I said, but he actually called me and said, hey, I'm thinking about re-upping for private lending. And I said, well, that's really great to hear. Let's talk. Maybe rental properties is the right move for you. And I said, talk to me about what the plan is after this one. And he said, well, I'm fully bought into the model, but I just changed jobs. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to contribute more to be able to acquire that third property. I'm not sure when. And I said, okay, well, let me just share with you what the opportunity is. And so that way, and then if you're not sure that you can get to multiple properties, then let's not do it. Let's not do rental properties. And so that's what I shared with him. And he said, that's really great to know. I'm going to think on that, but I'm going to go with private lending right now because I'm not sure that I am ready to get to multiple rental properties. So, and then the other question, stubbornness. No, that's not usually a challenge, for us with new investors coming in. I would say just different goals. The biggest reasons, the two biggest reasons why it doesn't work for a new client to come to JWB. Number one is that they want to be too active, right? They may come from some experience themselves where they were really in the nitty gritty and they wanted to have final tenant approval. They wanted to manage the materials list of the contractors that are renovating their homes or building their homes. And that's important for them. Which is great. Sometimes that works for folks. We're not built that way. We are built to be this team that you're going to do your due diligence on. You're going to find out how we do business, what our core values are, and then you're going to let us run. And we're going to show up every single month and hit those monthly numbers and those goals for you. And we're going to keep you in the loop along the way. We have tools. Obviously, this buying plan tool is one tool that we have. We have our client ROI reporting tool, our owner portal, where you get to see every transaction. You get to see how your assets are performing, but you don't want to be in the nitty gritty. You don't want to be in those types of decisions. So that's one reason why it might not work. Another reason is that people are so focused on cash flows that they have their cash flow blinders on. And if you only look at the Jacksonville market, you don't look at the value for the JWB team, and you don't look at, and all you look at is cash flows in the JWB market, this is not going to be the market for you, because you could go to another market which has a better return on investment strictly from cash flows, right? You can go to Cleveland. Cleveland has lower purchase prices. The rents are lower, but it's a better return on investment just from cash flow. Now, the flip side to that is if you look at all 5 profit centers and you look at growth over a full market cycle, you look at tax savings and principal pay down, Jacksonville laps it. But if you are only looking at cash flow, that's one reason why we're probably just not going to be the right fit for you, because cash flow is king for you. That's all you want to look at. And you're not looking at all 5 profit centers. So those would be the 2 biggest reasons.
So the person that looks at only cash flow, they're looking at just having that to spend and have it be liquidity. And they're thinking in Are they just thinking in short term, or, is it a lifestyle thing? Like,
I think it's a lack of perspective, really educate. Well, let me start. There are some folks that are really close to retirement and they say, listen, all I care about is cash flow because that extra $50 a month for me times 6 properties is really impactful.
Mhm.
And you know what? I'm not planning on holding on to these for more than 3 years or 5 years. And if that's the case, then I think you should be going to another market. If cash flow is going to change your life times 6 properties and you're only going to be in it for a short time, you probably shouldn't come to Jacksonville because your money could go farther earning cash flow in a Cleveland market, right? So there's a small segment of the population that I think that really serves. I think moreover, though, people just lack perspective and lack education on all 5 profit centers. They really don't know what the 5 profit centers are. And they have no clue that after you hold on to these assets for 15 years, like I have, you're going to look back and your gains from your cash flow are going to be nice, but your gains from appreciation, as I do this very technical chart here, right? Your gains from home price appreciation are going to be much more significant than the gains from cash flows. And people just don't know that. People lived through the Great Recession. They saw home values go down. They think that they go down routinely. And that's not true, especially over a full market cycle. So I think it's rooted in a lack of education and perspective.
Got it. There you go. All right. We got a couple of quick questions here in the chat. Greg, I'm going to try to get you off here in like 5 minutes, right?
Cool.
We're coming up on 2:00. Alex Romanzi asks, what is the minimum requirement for private lending and the length?
The minimum requirement is $50,000 for private lending, and it's a 3-year term.
Okay, there you go. And that 3-year term sometimes gets paid early, but you want them going in there expecting 3-year term, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, there's a lot to talk about with private lending. Reach out to the team, get all the details on it. We'll make sure that it's a good idea. But yeah, be committed for a 3-year term. We want to pay you off as quickly as possible because we're in the business of selling assets and turning them over quickly. So many times it does happen quicker than that.
There you go. Mason Katat asks, do you offer new construction as well?
Great question. We do offer new construction. In fact, I would encourage you to show up for the Thursday POT Dubs Property of the Week. Yeah. This Thursday, I just put the Property of the Week together, and that is going to be a brand new construction property. And that one's currently available. And so we'll break that one down together.
All right. You heard the teaser here first. We got a new construction property coming up on the property.
It felt really weird for me to say that without.
I know. I was like, week. So we got a new construction property coming up on Thursday. We're going to go into that, and it's available right now. So Lord knows if it's going to get scooped up between today and tomorrow and Thursday, but it'll be really good practice of poking through those numbers. Mason, if you haven't been to one of those calls, we literally put the pro forma up and we just go through the numbers and the different things on the property, and we mess with it. And you can ask. That's a really, really interactive call, kind of like this buying plan, which is not so normal on a Tuesday. That's it, Greg. We got a couple of awesome comments I just want to read off here, man. Denny Davis writes, guys, most substantive program you have done to date. Just fantastic. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Denny. That's awesome, man.
Thank you so much.
Jennifer Filson writes, Margaret, you're in great hands with JWB. I've been a client since 2012 and I love them. So thanks, Margaret, thanks, Jen, for putting it in. Margaret Smith puts in the chat, Greenville, PA, have a wonderful duplex there. Values do not increase except minimally year over year, but ROI is high. No real estate management available there. I have to use a family to manage, which truly has its ups and downs.
Can imagine there, Margaret.
Yeah. And Mason, what time on Thursday? 12:30. Just like today, since you registered for this one, you're going to get a reminder about that, right? That's an automatic, so you'll get it, but it's also a 12:30 to 1:30 call. Marilyn Cotterman from Homosassa, Florida.
Of the Manatees.
Writes, best show ever. Thanks, Marilyn. Appreciate that. Leo writes, I will have to watch this again later on Facebook and will share with my friends, including the stubborn ones. Great show, Greg and Pablo, as everyone. And as usual, learned a lot. Lee Bishop writes, you really rocked it today. Mama Jane Terracano writes, great show, gentlemen. Mason Katat writes, thanks, guys. Mason, good to have you, man. Hope we see you again. And, we just want to say thanks, right? Like, it's 48 people on this call. We've been talking for almost an hour and a half. The idea that you're here in the middle of a Tuesday, just like work week, hanging out with us, never goes without noticing. It really, really means the world to us that you drive the show. This community drives the show. You guys are our friends. You're my friends. You're Greg's friends. This is really, 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 really cool. And again, Thursday is going to be JWB Property of the Week. So
Week.
join us then next week. We kind of teased it again, but just to remind you, we're talking about somebody that just recently did a cash out refinance, and the way that he looked through it, really, really intelligent call. If you need some help, you want to go through this exercise with a professional, go to chatwithjwb.com. If not, hope to see you in the Facebook group. You know, I'm just grateful to have you back, Greg. I'm glad you came back from Antigua. I know that it's a beautiful Caribbean island, but hey, man, Jacksonville's home. So good to have you back, buddy. So I'll give you last word, my friend.
You know, I think you rocked it, man. Thank you guys for being here, making the show super special. Super excited to have you here for the Thursday show. The Property of the Week was out last week. Been missing it, and Thursday is very special as well. So we'll catch you guys on Thursday. Thank you, everybody.